YN's pother, the office air felt suffocating. My head throbbed, my limbs felt sluggish, and exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. The past few nights had been spent at the hospital, watching over my mother, running on nothing but caffeine and sheer willpower. That this wasn't just fatigue. I knew that much. I rubbed my temples, willing the dizziness away as I pulled open my desk drawer. My fingers trembled as I retrieved the crisp white envelope inside, its contents practically burning through the paper. I swallowed hard, staring at my name printed at the top of the test results. A string of unfamiliar medical terms littered the page, but I knew what they meant. I had read them over and over until they were seared into my mind. I forced a deep breath and shoved the paper back into the drawer. Out of sight, but never out of mind. I had never intended to fall for Jungkook. He was my boss, a man out of my league in every possible way. But his warmth, his intensity, his genuine concern, he had wormed his way into my heart despite every wall I had put up. And that was why I had to push him away. I couldn't bear to let him love me, only to watch him suffer because of me. Anna's POV. I made my way to an upscale bar, where a man already waited in the dimly lit VIP section. Sung-hoon, Jungkook's longtime rival and biggest enemy, sat with a smug smirk on his face as he swirled his whiskey. "To what do I owe the pleasure, Anna?" he asked, his sharp eyes studying me with interest. I slid into the seat across from him, crossing my legs elegantly. "I have a work for you." Sung-hoon raised a brow, intrigued. "Oh? And why would Jungkook's little admirer be coming to me?" I scoffed, leaning forward. "Because we both want the same thing. I want YN out of the picture. And you? Well, you'd love nothing more than to see Jungkook distracted and vulnerable." Sung-hoon's grin widened. "Go on. YN, his weakness. He may act cold, but I've seen the way he looks at her. She's the only thing that could shake him," I said, my voice dripping with venom. "I don't mean making her life difficult. I mean getting rid of her entirely. She has no place in his life, and I refuse to let her keep stealing his attention. We make her disappear, and Jungkook will be broken. Vulnerable. The perfect moment for you to strike." Sung-hoon chuckled, amused by my ruthlessness. "You're more vicious than I thought. I like it. So how do we do this?" I smirked. "I have contacts, people who can make things look like an accident. No one will ever suspect a thing. YN will be out of the picture, and Jungkook will be too distracted with grief to see what's coming next." Sung-hoon leaned back, taking a slow sip of his drink. "Anna, you just might be my new favorite person. Consider it done." I clinked my glass against his, a satisfied smile playing on my lips. Soon, YN would be nothing more than a memory, and Jungkook would finally be mine. Author's POV. Jungkook, Jimin, and Taeyoung were standing outside the office building, off to the club to crack another Mafia deal, as they waited for the car to pull around. It was one of those rare moments when things felt like they might finally calm down after a long stretch of tension. That tranquility shattered in an instant. Jungkook's eyes snapped to the street as a car screeched to a halt, swerving to avoid something. He barely had time to process it before his heart dropped into his stomach. The unmistakable figure of YN, her face filled with panic, appeared in the chaos as she rushed across the crosswalk. A second later, everything seemed to move in slow motion. A van came barreling down the road, unable to stop in time. YN's body was thrown to the ground with a sickening thud. Her body crumpled, her limbs twisted in unnatural ways, and for a moment, the world around Jungkook went silent. "Why?" he screamed, rushing toward her before Jimin or Taeyoung could even react. His mind was in a daze, his body moving on pure instinct. He was already at her side, his hands trembling as he checked for signs of life, his breath shallow with panic. "YN, please open your eyes. It's me, your Jungkook." His voice cracked as he shook her gently, his heart pounding against his ribs. Blood pooled around her, a cruel reminder of how fragile life could be. Tears blurred his vision. He couldn't lose her. Not like this. Weenan's eyes fluttered weakly, a faint smile ghosting her lips. With what little strength she had, she reached up, her hand trembling as she cupped his face. Jungkook. Her words choked as she struggled to speak. "No, stop talking. Just please keep open your eyes, YN. I'm so sorry." Jungkook's heart clenched. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He felt like the world was falling apart around him, and all he wanted was to turn back time, to undo all the mistakes he'd made. It wasn't your fault. It was never. Maybe just God doesn't have better plans with me. I've always loved you." "Jungkook," she confessed, her breath ragged as she fought to stay conscious. "I was so scared. You'll leave me. Her hand fell limp against his cheek, but Jungkook held onto it desperately, not willing to let her go. Tears streamed down his face as he kissed her hand, his heart shattering with the weight of her words. "I love you too," he choked out, his voice breaking. I always will. Please, stay with me. I'm so sorry, YN. I should have never let you go. I should have fought for you. Please, stay with me. I need you. I know I don't deserve you. I've been so selfish, and now it's too late. I love you. I always have. Please don't leave me. Not like this." His voice was trembling, full of the ache of 1,000 regrets. Jungkook's breath hitched as her hand fell limp. "No, YN, please," he begged, holding on to her desperately. The sirens wailed in the distance, but time felt frozen. He held her close, pressing his forehead to hers, his tears mixing with the blood-stained road. As the ambulance sped through the night, Jungkook clung to her fragile form, his mind replaying every mistake. He had pushed her away when all she had ever done was love him. And now, as she lay unconscious, he realized just how much he had taken her for granted. "I'm sorry," he whispered again, his voice breaking. "Please, don't leave me." But deep down, he feared it was already too late. When they finally arrived at the hospital, Jungkook was the first to rush out, not waiting for anyone to tell him what to do. He just needed to be with her, to make sure she was okay. "Sir, you need to wait here," one of the nurses said gently, trying to hold him back as they took YN into the emergency room. "No," Jungkook replied, his voice firm with quiet desperation. "I need to be with her. Please just let me stay with her." He was left alone outside the operation theater, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. His blood-stained hands clenched at his sides, and he fought back the tears that threatened to spill over. The reality of it all was setting in. He might lose her, and this time, there would be no coming back. Jungkook's pave. I had barely taken a breath when I heard it. A flurry of footsteps, the sound of frantic voices, then a loud, unmistakable beep. The heart monitor flatlined. I froze. My entire body went cold, my vision narrowing in on YN's still form. More doctors rushed in like a storm, and I couldn't move. It was like my feet were glued to the floor, my body betraying me as my heart raced with panic. "Clear!" I heard one of the doctors shout, and I watched helpless as they pressed the defibrillator paddles to her chest. I felt like I was going to suffocate. I pushed past every person who tried to hold me back, my vision blurry from tears that wouldn't stop. Every fiber of my being screamed for them to stop, to save her. But nothing seemed to work. The beeping continued, erratic, like the sound of my own heart shattering with each passing second. And then I heard it, the sound of my parents' voices. I didn't even turn around as I heard the door burst open. The familiar voices of my mother and father filling the space. Jungkook? My father's voice was calm, but there was an edge of worry in it. I couldn't look at them. I couldn't do anything but watch as the doctors continued their work on YN. My breathing was shallow, every breath feeling like it was being ripped from my chest. I was losing her, and it was my fault. Taeyong's POV. We had barely arrived when the chaos erupted. We'd been waiting outside the emergency room, trying to keep our heads cool, but nothing could have prepared us for the sight of Jungkook. He looked like a man who had just lost everything. We followed him in as he rushed through the hospital, his eyes frantic and wild. Himmin tried to keep up, but we were all swept in the current of Jungkook's panic. But there was nothing we could do. Nothing except watch as he broke down in front of YN. And then the beeping stopped. I saw Jungkook's face, pale as he screamed in desperation. He was shaking. I could see his world crumbling around him. YN was in critical condition, and everything he had done, everything he had put her through, was catching up to him. I didn't know how to comfort him. I didn't know what to say. The weight of the situation crushed all of us. But Jungkook was different. He was devastated. Jungkook's POV continued. I couldn't think. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Every time I tried to step closer to YN, I was blocked and told to stay back. The panic rising in my chest was suffocating. I could hear my mom's voice now, soft and soothing, trying to calm me down. But I couldn't calm down. I couldn't do anything but watch the doctors work on her, trying to bring her back. Jungkook. My mother's hand gently cupped my cheek, and for a split second, I turned to face her. Her eyes were full of tears, but there was a firmness to her voice, a stability I couldn't find. You have to calm down, sweetheart. We're going to get through this, okay? She's going to be all right. I wanted to believe her. I wanted so badly to believe that YN would be okay. But in my heart, I felt like I had already lost her. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean anything I did, I muttered, my voice shaking. I pushed her away. I hurt her, and now she might die, and it's my fault. My mother's hands tightened on my shoulders, and I buried my face into her chest. Jungkook, this is not your fault. You've been through a lot. And YN, she knows you. She knows your heart. I couldn't hear her. I couldn't process her words. Minutes stretched into hours, and just as the weight of the waiting room's silence became unbearable, a doctor entered. Jungkook shot up from his seat, every muscle tense, his eyes wide with fear. Doctor, how is she? Please, tell me she's going to be okay, he said, his voice trembling. The doctor looked at him solemnly, and for a moment, Jungkook thought his heart might stop altogether. But then the doctor spoke, his voice steady. She's critical, but she's stable for now. We've managed to stop the bleeding, but it's going to be touch and go for a while. We're doing everything we can. But there's something else we need to discuss. Jungkook frowned, the unease creeping back in. What do you mean? He asked, his voice almost a whisper. The doctor hesitated before continuing, glancing at the clipboard in his hand. During the scans and tests we conducted after her accident, we discovered something else. YN has an early-stage cancer.